Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Ben Olson. That's Nathan Fox. We're the founders of LSATdemon.com and our weekly podcast, Thinking LSAT. We have an email here from Derek.
Derek says, "Hi, Ben and Nathan. I'm preparing for the January LSAT, and my scores are currently ranging from low 170s to high 170s. My logic games is consistently -0. Logical reasoning is -0 to -2. But I need to improve my reading comprehension skills." Okay, good that you have attained perfection on the games. Great that you have gotten good enough at logical reasoning to sometimes get -0. That's awesome. And great that you have recognized that you need to improve RC. So lots to like here. Specifically, I need help with tone and purpose questions. Tone questions involve a lot of new vocabulary, parentheses. I never knew that there are so many adjectives to describe tone. And I struggle to distinguish between two answer choices that have the same direction, but different strengths. Oh,
Okay.
So like,
They're both negative, but one's stronger in terms of negativity or something like that.
yeah, strident disdain
Yeah.
versus
Apprehension.
studied disapproval or something like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I'll just tell you that the answer is studied disapproval because like that, I've never seen a passage where strident disdain was the tone. But anyway, for purpose questions, I find it challenging to differentiate between features in the passage and the actual purpose. I tend to have high standards for identifying the purpose and sometimes see correct answer choices as simply resembling features rather than the purpose.
Yeah. So you got to recognize that almost all questions in reading comp are must be true questions. And so the correct answer, if it is stating something that must be true, then that's very likely the answer if there's not another answer that's more on point with the purpose. It's very possible that there's some other answer that Derek is choosing that might sound more like the purpose, but has a technical inaccuracy, right? The LSAT is obsessed with not being inaccurate in any way, shape, or form. I think that's what's happening here, at least for the purpose questions. Derek is seeing an answer that must be true, but not giving that enough significance, and then picking an answer that has something that's maybe a little off about it.
Yeah, Derek,
technically wrong.
I think you need to read my blog post. I have a couple blog posts that I would like to refer you to. One blog post is entitled "On Reading Comp, They're All Must Be Trues." Because I mean, that's the thing that you're missing, Derek, is that you're picking an answer that isn't even a must be true based on the passage. Like you're picking something that is like misrepresenting the passage because you're getting too weird about what the purpose of the passage is.
Yeah.
Because the other thing I want to tell you, and I think I wrote a blog post about this too. You should be able to find them on Google. I wrote a blog post that was like, basically on reading comp, they're all main point questions. Because what I did, and I went through a sample passage and I was like, well, is that a main point question? And basically it was. Because here's my thing is that I think that it's more about the main point than you think it is, Derek. And so when they ask you about the primary purpose of the passage, well, the primary purpose of the passage is always to prove their main point. So what was their main point? You have to pick an answer that is aligned with the main point of the passage. Essentially, you just need to remember that they're testing your reading comprehension. They want to know whether you understood what the passage said, and they over and over and over are going to ask you what the main point of the passage was. Author's attitude also, same thing. It's like, well, their attitude is that they have this purpose of proving their main point. They want to prove their main point. And so I think, Derek, you're the perfect level of student, by the way, who is probably missing reading comprehension questions because you're overcomplicating it. Like, you don't even realize how easy it actually is, Derek. They're not looking for you to speculate on what the author is probably thinking. They're only asking you what the author actually said. So just remember that these purpose questions they're a variant of must be true. So you have to pick an answer that is justified by the passage. Nothing different, nothing extra. Like that's what it said. And purpose questions to me are just like, well, it's basically a main point question, which is basically a must be true question. I don't know. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the same advice can apply to the tone questions that he's talking about here too, because when you identify the main point, we did a reading comp passage in my class yesterday, and the main point was something to the extent of, hey, the author thinks that this other theory is mostly good, but inadequate. There's some problems with it.
Okay.
That's different from outright rejecting that theory, right? Sometimes the authors are like, oh, that's complete bullshit. And so anyways, my point here is that recognizing that the author accepted most of the theory, but thought there were some problems with it, also reveals the author's tone for the passage. So when there was a tone question, we're looking to the main point and saying, well, the author didn't outright reject this theory. The author,
it's not unequivocal.
Yeah.
It's not complete
rejection.
denial.
Yeah. There's some problems with it. So it's like, it's measured. Measured, apprehension or something like that.
Yeah.
But the point is that the main point gets you to the correct answer in the tone question. It gets you to the correct answer in the purpose question. And so someone who looks at your two blog posts and says, wait a sec, one says they're all main point questions and one says they're all must be true questions, that seems to be in conflict. Well, no, actually, that's because all questions are both. And that's because the LSAT has such a high standard, it will not tolerate any correct answer that has anything that is mildly inaccurate.
Yep.
So sometimes I see wrong answers that, boy, they sound much closer to my prediction of the main point or purpose, but they have one little thing that's technically inaccurate, inconsistent with the passage. Boom, that's out. No questions asked. It's over. And so I'm going to pick the technically correct answer, even if it feels a little bit further from the main point or something like that. So anyways.
I think that's great. And I want to say this again, Derek, I don't even notice tone questions or purpose questions. Mm-hmm. Like to me, they just look like must be true main point questions, which all the questions, like I predict the answer on most of the questions on Reading Comp. And I bet that Derek's not. I think Derek is getting right in. He's like, so Derek is doing it in a very LSAT way instead of just you're the smartest person in the room, Derek. You read the fucking document. Why don't you just answer the question before you start looking at the answer choices? You know, I mean, ultimately, you're going to be the smartest person in the room if you're a lawyer.
Yeah.
And you're going to be the best person at reading that document. That's your job. So try to answer the questions without looking at the answer choices. It's probably simpler than you think. Like sometimes I struggle to come up with a prediction and I end up saying something that to me just sounds really dumb, right? It's like a dumbed down version where I end up saying something like, well, I mean, they, like you just said, Ben, well, they accepted most of the theory, but then they rejected part of it.
Yeah, exactly. Plain English.
Yeah, in plain English, like totally. But it's like, because I'm the smartest person in the room, because I'm the best person at reading this document, I then am going to say, like, when I say it, here's what this says, like, I'm going to be like dumbing it down, right? I'm going to be saying it in like, well, in plain spoken terms. I mean, essentially, they accepted a lot of it, but then they rejected a big part of it. And I'm not predicting the exact words that are going to be there in the tone correct answer choice. But my clumsy prediction of accepted most of it and rejected part of it is going to turn out to be an answer choice that is like measured approval or something like that. Or like studied
or qualified.
Yeah. Qualified acceptance.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But that's not the words that I predicted. I predicted, well, they kind of liked most of it, but they didn't like part of it.
And that helps you with that answer, but it also helps you get rid of the other answers, right? The wrong answers, it says, complete rejection or whatever. And you're saying, oh, well, it wasn't that. That's not what I just said.
No.
So,
and Derek's right. And Derek is, he's kind of like the ostrich with the head in the sand here because he's not mentioning, he's going on about, I have high standards. And so these correct answers, they look like they're only resembling features rather than the purpose. But my response to that is, all right, dude, but what else are you going to pick?
Yep.
Because the answer that you're actually ending up picking here is just not even justified by the passage. You're picking something that is like, I don't care about whether we're actually getting to the tone or whether we're actually getting to the purpose or whatever. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I need an answer that I feel comfortable vouching for, because it's based on the record.
Yeah.
And so, Derek, you might need to do a little like more stringent process of elimination on like the answer that you're picking. You're standing up in court and you're saying, yes, Your Honor, the record reflects these words, like the record shows this. Yeah. And no, it does not, if you're missing that question. So you need to pick something that is shown by the record and stop worrying so much about, does this reflect the author's purpose or whatever? I mean, I have never said that in class. I've never been like, oh, well, that would be correct, but that wasn't the actual purpose.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. Okay, continuing.
Yep.
As for passage type, I struggle a lot with natural science passages. I have significant trouble comprehending the explanation for the central phenomenon. For example, it's hard for me to understand how the brain generates airflow, how rocks roll around on the seabed, or why we see things flipped left to right, but not top to bottom in a mirror. That's one of the trickiest reading comp passages, the mirror one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Natural science passages are the most significant cause of time loss. Ooh. In my reading comp section. Okay, so it seems like you're keeping track of your time, Derek, which is not helping you to learn about how the brain generates airflow or how rocks roll around on the seabed or why we see things flipped left to right but not top to bottom in a mirror. And Derek says, I almost always miss more questions on natural science passages, no matter the difficulty. Couple things there. Self-fulfilling prophecy is very possible. Selection bias is very possible. It could not even be real. You could just be perceiving this.
When you do poorly, you notice there was a natural science passage, but when you do well, you don't even pay attention. Yep.
Or when you do poorly on a not natural sciences passage, you either perceive it as a natural sciences passage or you just forget, there was that one about
but that was hard.
Social science. Yeah, but that was a hard one. And you just kind of write it off so that you could preserve this preconceived notion that you're always going to do worse on natural science passages.
Yep.
And I think you're probably freaking out because you're thinking like, I don't see passage type either. Right? Like the people, it's a legal document. Okay. You're not a scientist. You're a lawyer. This document is not here for purposes of scientific research. This document is here for legal purposes. So what does it say? Like you're not meant to know anything about, that mirror one. It is a mind bender, but they tell you everything you need to know. You just have to read it and you have to learn from it. And it sounds like Derek is like managing the time and worrying about natural sciences and, oh my God, I don't understand. It's hard for me to understand these things. And it's like, no, because you're a great reader, Derek. You score -0 sometimes on logical reasoning. Like there's no question about your ability to read. I just don't think you're applying that ability to read on these natural sciences passages.
Yeah. And I would add that there are many occasions where I say out loud or in my head if I'm just taking the test by myself. But when I'm talking in class, which is what happens most these days, I'm saying, well, I don't really understand that, but I do clearly understand that this thing over here is making this other thing get hotter.
Yep.
And I can't sit here and explain to you why that's possible. And they may be trying to say that right there, but I don't fully grasp it, but I get the idea. This thing is making this other thing hotter. Let's move. Let's keep going.
Yeah. Some intense terminology that they give you. It's like, well, you don't have to know exactly what that means. You just have to know broad, big picture, what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to let things just be technical terminology, right? If they say, oh, it's the lateral medial blah, blah, blah in the brain that causes this thing. Okay, you're not meant to know what all that means. You just go, oh, you say it's the lateral media, blah, blah, blah. That causes this.
Yep. So when we talk about the lateral media, blah, blah, blah.
Right. That causes
I know
dementia or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you get it. You're like, you get the big picture, even though you don't know what the lateral media, blah,
or
blah,
why
blah.
that does it. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like Derek is just thinking a lot about question type and passage type and a little bit of managing the time.
Yep.
And instead, you need to just think about it as, hey, man, you're a lawyer. This came into your law office. You don't have a choice. Like, I think sometimes kids are like, well, I didn't want to be a scientist, so, I'm never going to do anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
Bullshit. You could be a family lawyer, and there could be some document that comes in that requires you to learn some things about science.
Yeah. You don't hear lawyers saying, oh, that's just beyond me.
Not a good look. Like, oh, I'm bad at math.
I'm not a math
lawyer.
guy. Yeah.
Fuck off. Okay.
Yeah.
You're not my lawyer then at all. You can be a lawyer who's bad at math. You're just not my lawyer.
Yeah.
Because, you don't have to be
the
a
math that we're talking
calculus.
about. Yeah.
You have to be able to read a document about calculus.
Yeah.
Okay. Derek continues. I have tried to improve my understanding of these passages by reading issues of Scientific American and focusing on the natural science section. However, I do not find it difficult to comprehend these articles, as they often use colloquial language in their publications. It's difficult to find poorly written science passages. Boy, Derek, yeah, he says, any suggestions? Best, Derek.
Derek, the challenge with these articles on the LSAT is that they are poorly written. I agree. They're written by academics, or the LSAC itself has made the passages harder. I've seen that too, where I've looked up the original source and it was written more clearly than the one on the test.
Right. They took something from Scientific American and then made it shittier. Yeah. Because they needed to make it harder to read, because it's not for public consumption. It's for the law school admission test. And they're testing your reading comprehension. So the way they do that is they take two sentences and combine it into one sentence so that it makes it harder to read.
Yeah. Or they take verbs and they turn them into nouns, and they just make things more abstract, and they remove subjects. So it's not someone doing something to somebody else. It's just the thing happening. So,
or there could be a thesis sentence at the top, a headline, and accompanying pictures, and those are all gone now, and they just get right into the argument instead of the statement of the findings and the thesis of the argument and then go through the argument. Instead, they just get right into the argument without any prep. I do have a tip, Derek, though. Derek says it's difficult to find poorly written science passages. No, it's not. I've got 100 of them for you. It's called The Science Passages on the Reading Comp in the LSAT. Yeah. We have 100 LSATs, and I really don't like this idea that you're going to go out and do outside reading that is going to somehow prepare you for the reading comp on the law school admission test. Instead, I would just do all of the reading comp on the law school admission test.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I wanted to talk to Derek about is that I agree. These articles written by journalists are better written. They are rewriting sentences so that each sentence clicks easier for their reader. They don't want poorly written sentences. It has a
headline and a subhead. They're giving you the main point before you read the document.
Yeah. So I agree with those problems, but I don't know that your problem is comprehending hard language anyway, because you're already doing very well on logical reasoning, and you're doing well, presumably, on most of reading comp. So I think you can decode these poorly written sentences. You're just not letting yourself do it.
You need to use your LR skills on reading comp, Derek.
Yeah.
You're thinking that reading comp is a totally different beast, and it's really not. Like, anybody who's good at logical reasoning can also be good at reading comp. You know how you predict the answers on logical reasoning? You need to start doing that on reading comp. If you're a Demon Live subscriber, we have a class called LSAT Cross Training. Editor Eric teaches that class, and he does them in rotation, but he shows you how you can use your strengths on games to get better at reading comp. And he has another one that's on using your strengths in logical reasoning to get better at reading comp. Derek, the stuff you're doing in LG and LR can definitely make you better at RC. You just got to get out of your own way, I think.
Yeah.
All right. That was a
Thanks
lot for Derek.
Yeah. Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.